Another week, another Mandalorian episode has come and passed us by, and I want to come on here. 280 episode 280 of the Rebel Scum podcast is coming tomorrow night. Hi Heidi. Hi Heidi. Sounds like a tongue twister. I got music playing right now. Let's get rid of this. Get rid of the music. Get rid of it. Out of there. 280 tomorrow with Brock. We're going to talk about this episode because what a phenomenal episode this was. This was an episode that, look, I'm jumping on here today. Last week I jumped on because obviously Ahmed Best thing blew my mind. I loved it so much. We saw, if you're not caught up on this season of Mandalorian up to now, stop watching, period. And if you haven't seen this week's episode 5, which is chapter 21, I think, then you should pause, come back later. It's going to be a good time. I promise. It's going to be a really good time coming up here because this show, and I've been saying this from the get-go, this is my opinion, but it's the truth. This is the strongest this show, this series, the Mandoverse has been. This is the strongest is this season. Now, I've also said, and Brock texted me today about the episode a little bit. We don't talk too much about the episodes until we do the podcast. We just say little things here and there because we want to be more, we want to have a real conversation when we actually discuss it on the show. Hello, Dale. General Dale Anobi. We want to have a raw discussion about it, so that's why we try to not so much talk about it beforehand. But he said, I think you're right. This does feel more like a binge watching show, and this episode was a strange one because it kind of, yes, I agree with that full-heartedly. However, it still felt like a complete episode in a lot of ways. Like it felt episodic in a lot of ways. It felt. I don't know how long it was. I heard it was under 40 minutes, but it felt like there was so much happening and it was nonstop. And I was thrilled with it. Just absolutely thrilled. Vermont Mike is here again to talk Star Wars. I was thrilled with how this one went from beginning to end. It kept me all in on everything that was going on. And it brought back the pirates and elements from the first episode. It didn't. The thing with this show is it knows where it's going. It knows where it's been, and that's why when people are like it has no direction, I always felt, and and I've said this a lot, as I feel like this season has had direction, and I still believe it has the most direction of any of the seasons we've gotten. I felt that way about Book of Boba Fett too. I said this to Darth Ward, to Rob when it was out. He's like, I think he was a little off on it. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he was a little off on it. And I said, I love this show. And he put me down and I said, but for me, it seems stronger than season 2 of Mandalorian and season 1. And if you want to, I'm not going to argue which was better or anything because why bother? But I just feel like they have this plan and they have a grasp on the universe and on the Mandoverse as a whole. And this season feels even a step above Book of Boba Fett. This episode 5, was essentially the entire season of Book of Boba Fett wrapped into one episode. And I loved it. And I love that you get the sense that they know where they're going and they know where they've been. They didn't forget about the pirates, right? Because as soon as the pirates showed up, they're like, oh, these are going to be the bad guys in Skeleton Crew. Well, maybe it's only that one guy, Fane. I think his name is Fane. Maybe it's only him showing up in Skeleton Crew. Or maybe Skeleton Crew takes place a little bit before this and you see Swamp Man thing, whatever. Maybe you see that. I'm not sure yet, but it felt good to have them come back. And they didn't just come back in a small way. They came back in a major way for Grief Karga, a major way to get us to the Rangers of the New Republic, a major way to kind of hint at Moff Gideon coming back or maybe something larger at play. And it tied in majorly to the title of this series, which is The Mandalorian, and it gave Mandalorians once again a purpose and a place to be. And that's how I feel like this show is approaching is is it's got its plan, so you just have to stick with it. And I know most people are, but everyone's jumps to the conclusion that they don't like it. It doesn't have any direction. It has direction. You've just got to follow it. It's not force feed. Like they're not putting, you're not James Woods on Family Guy with the Reese's Pieces, right? Like maybe you are. You got to just follow it and trust the process. That's what we always say, right? Trust the process. Yeah, Vermont Mike's saying his only complaint was we didn't get more of the cameo. I want to get into that, but let's just rush to it. Zeb showing up. First of all, let me know what you guys thought. Did you know right away that was Zeb? Were you like, oh, that's Zeb? Or did you think it was just another Lasat? Because I was like, that sounds like Zeb, but maybe they just want all Lasats to sound the same. And then, of course, it is Zeb, which makes sense because we're getting Sabine in the Ahsoka show, and Hera's showing up in the Ahsoka show. Chopper inevitably, and then obviously we're gonna Ezra and Thrawn and whatnot. But Zeb at the end of Rebels, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't seen it. What's it been, 5 years since it's been off the air? 4 or 5 years. I haven't seen it since that first airing. But what I remember was that doesn't Zeb go back to his homeworld to live like a peaceful life? Doesn't he just or finds his something and like goes off? Like, am I wrong in that? Because that's why I always thought, oh, Zeb doesn't need to show up in these shows because he leaves his nice quiet life with other Lasats, and he goes off and leaves with them. That's what I remembered. Callus was not there, but there was 3 other cameos, and I've seen a few people on Twitter, so I can't point out anyone specific. I don't think. Maybe I should. The first one I saw, I could probably find and point out, but there was 3 other awesome cameos in there, and no, I'm not going to be able to find it. They were the 3 previous Rangers of the New Republic, which was Deborah Chow, David Filoni, and Rick Famuyiwa. I hope I said that right. I always say the name wrong. By the way, earlier this week I did the show, like they need like an overseer of Star Wars. I'm kind of feeling like Rick Famuyiwa, he might be grooming to that. I don't know. Like, am I wrong in that assumption that he could be the one that oversees the Star Wars theatrical world? I know he's in deep on The Mandalorian, but he's an executive producer now in this show. He's worked, and hear me out, he's worked closely with Favreau and Filoni now. And then you have Favreau, who's doing this show and overseeing this whole TV thing, who learned from Kevin Feige on the whole Marvel thing. And now you have this. So this is because what my point was the other day is that they basically need Kathleen Kennedy needs to hire James Gunn, like David Zaslav hired James Gunn for DC. Kathleen Kennedy needs that for Star Wars. That's my thing. Is like she is not that, and she's not. I don't think she was ever meant to be that, and that's what they kind of need. But anyway, those 3 were also in the bar with Zeb, which is kind of cool that they had this whole like Rangers. I'm gonna keep calling it Rangers of the New Republic because that show's happening to me, whether you like it or not. In my mind, it's happening. I'm watching it. Zeb's there. I can't remember. What is the main Ranger's name? I can never remember his name, but I love, by the way, so here's the other thing with this show is Brock asked me last week, how did you feel about the episode? Because it kind of went off and it kind of did what The Last of Us does, and it was a nothing episode. And I said, well, no, we've met these characters before, and now we had that whole long, it was a whole long episode with Kane and Dr. Pershing. And I think the cool thing for me was I thought it was going to be all about Dr. Pershing. Maybe it still will be. That's what I thought it was going to be, all about Dr. Pershing. And then what happens is it's not about Pershing at all. It's about Kane. And in this episode, we get that a lot more, right? Where it's like Kane is clearly working for the Empire, and the Ranger obviously knows what's going on, has an idea of what's going on. And it's like the pieces of the puzzle that start coming together. Gideon there's a plot for Gideon and the Empire to come back, and people are complaining. I've seen people complain like, I don't think it's enough time for the New Republic to be in charge before things start to go south. It's like, well, they can't be perfect, and we're seeing that they're not perfect. But and to be perfect, they're trying to show that they have to do things a little unorthodox. But the other thing is, we're seeing, the sequel trilogy is coming, and it's coming in 19 years, 20 years after. So however far we are removed from Return of the Jedi now, we've got until The Force Awakens. And by the time The Force Awakens is around, the First Order is pretty much established. They're a thing. People know about them. They're not hidden in the shadows necessarily. So I think, it makes complete sense to me what they're doing. And I love seeing it. I love seeing the inner workings. And Brock always says the Clone Wars has made the prequel trilogy better for him. And these are going to make the sequel trilogy stronger. And that's a good thing, right? Like that's what's so great about these shows is you could punch them in, and then George Lucas had the benefit of making the special editions, and for whatever reason, the Disney era just does not seem to have that want or need to do a special edition. And maybe in the contract when they bought it, they said that they couldn't do it. I don't know what it is, but they haven't really had the means to do that special edition. And it would be nice to get some, but now instead we get these so they can punch in the stories here and there, and you get, your Snoke tease in season 2, and you get, your Moff Gideon here, and like there's like the fact that there's hints of something bigger happening in the galaxy, of the Empire trying to come back as the leaders, the rulers of the galaxy. That's huge. And I don't know if the Mandalorian show itself will deal with all of that, or if it will be the Ahsoka show, or whatever, like where it's going to go. It could be one big giant Defenders style get together where that's where it all comes together, or they just take it and they play with it, and they're like, it's coming because you watch the sequels. It's coming. So we don't have to end it because it ends in The Rise of Skywalker, essentially. I'm curious, and let me know what you guys think in the chat. I'm curious if they're going to deal with Sheevy P at all. And I don't mean him coming into the show necessarily, but his return. And I like The Rise of Skywalker. I'm on record as saying that, and you can't go back on what you say. And so I actually enjoy it more than most people. I don't know. Whatever. It's whatever. I think it's fun. It's gone down on my list since I first watched it. But if it's on TV or whatever, I will sit down and I will watch it. But no, we got visitors. No, we don't. So the one thing that they didn't handle very well in that was the return of Palpatine. They're just like, oh yeah, something, the dark side pathways, something. I'm back, eh? And I know everybody rags on the line somehow Palpatine returned. I still think that is the most misunderstood line probably in Star Wars, because that's not the explanation for his return. That is just like, oh my God, how the hell did this guy come back? It's kind of like that moment for him there. So the reason why I'm asking, and again, let me know what you guys think in the chat, is could we see them? I mean, maybe the Snoke bit and Pershing was the start of it, but could we see that occurring, the formation of Palpatine, the essence of Palpatine, something to do, maybe not Exegol, but maybe a hint of this possibility, and maybe Gideon or Thrawn or someone to that effect. Maybe these guys, they know, they're aware, hey, the Emperor is back. Is that, like, do you think that's a possibility? And oh wow, my chat froze, and I just all of a sudden got I honestly thought that Tar Vizsla was going to go against Mando, and then Rangers of the Mandalorian, new boss, same as the old boss with the New Republic. Yep. My only complaint was less Grogu. Yeah, there was less Grogu, definitely. The New Republic is failing the galaxy bureaucracy reset. I like the sequels. Yeah, I'm not even arguing against like liking the sequels or whatever. Just I'm just saying, book BB was good as well. Snoke equals Plagueis. Kidding. Maybe we'll see a Sith cult. I love the sequel trilogy. That's why I'm so excited. I watched the video pretty much be brought to its knees yesterday because someone's depressed about all roads leading back to the sequel trilogy. I've seen that a lot too. I don't know how you could be depressed about. Look. I like the sequels. I rag on them here and there, but I actually ultimately, like I said, I just watched The Rise of Skywalker because it showed up on my Apple TV. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll watch it. Why not? Last Jedi, yeah, throw that one on. Force Awakens. Force Awakens, I consider a donut, right? Empty cup. Let's put it on. Let's watch it. I love Finn is so good in that movie. I'll watch. I like those movies. However, if you cannot stand the sequel trilogy, like absolutely despise the sequel trilogy, and you're depressed that everything in the Disney Plus shows are leading towards that, don't be. Why would you be? Because I mean, yeah, like okay, you might not like them, but if you break down what the sequels are, right? So you break them all down. The Empire is back. CVP is back. He's in hiding. They're gonna twist the mind of Han Solo's son. The New Republic is in shambles, and they get to Hosnian Prime. There's like so many things that even the Hosnian Prime, which I think is stupid. Like I don't like Hosnian Prime at all. I think it was dumb. I love that we keep going to Coruscant every week, but when I watched The Force Awakens, I thought they blew up Coruscant. That's what I thought happened, and it wasn't. So why do they go to Hosnian Prime? I'm sure it might have been explained in the book, but I didn't read that book, and I'm betting most people that watch the show didn't either. So why would they do that? Why would the New Republic go to Hosnian Prime? What's the benefit to that? Is it like to me? That's interesting, right? Like Mon Mothma. By the way, rumor that Mon Mothma is going to be showing up in Mandalorian, and I think Ahsoka, and then Andor. That's awesome. Tying it all. That ties it all in so well. I hope that's a thing. I hope. I hope it didn't just ruin it for anybody. It's a rumor, but I hope that's a thing because that would be phenomenal. Some fans want, yeah, some fans do want the sequels retconned. I get it. I don't. They shouldn't be retcon. I think the problem is, and we talked like Monday. I kind of went off on this a little bit without going anywhere. But I think the problem isn't the sequels. It's that they decided to just end it. They're like, it's over. The Skywalker saga is over. The end. I don't. I don't understand that because even Marvel, for instance, they do the Infinity Saga, right? And they're like, Infinity Saga is over, and they keep going. So why would they end like they're like episode 9? This is it. Everything ends. Why not keep going? And they didn't even end anything, right? Like the way it ended is like, but we were. It's kind of like that's where we were 3 movies ago. We didn't really progress anything necessarily, other than Rey has a yellow lightsaber, which is awesome, and I would totally be down for more stories about that. But I'm just saying, like, don't retcon it. Do what you're doing with the TV shows, right? Flesh the little things out that need to be fleshed out because as much as everybody can love those movies, and look, I'll use me as my love for the prequels as an example. I love the prequels to death. That is, I'm not even ashamed to admit that. I love them to death. But there are things that need to be fleshed out in them. And then you have Clone Wars, and Clone Wars kind of helps with that. So if you have the opportunity to do that, why not? Right? I'm not saying not everything needs to be explained. That takes away the mystique of things, definitely. But little things you could flesh out, be like, oh, the reason for that was this, and they do that well in novels. But look, I love books. I wrote one. Heidi has written some. But let's be real here. Star Wars is as great as Star Wars has been in literature. It's better visually. I guess you read literature. It's better when you watch it, though, right? It's better on the screen. It's better on the big screen, but it's better on the screen. Now people have big screens in their houses. This is where Star Wars belongs. Star Wars belongs as on this. Like the books are great for little things, but now we have the Disney Plus stuff. Put it all on there. Show me why Shivi P was able to return. Show me why, Poe Dameron's parents, are they going to make an appearance? Why not? Why not? Like it's all open. But back, like, so Zeb showing up is great. I think they're gonna. Again. I don't know. I wasn't expecting it, but I guess now they've opened the door for Zeb to be on the other shows, right? They've opened the door now so he could join Sabine in Ahsoka if he wanted. But he's also working for the New Republic, so maybe he'll be out of crosshairs there. Maybe. Wonder where Callus is, though. That would have been great. All the TV shows, including Andor and Kenobi, are part of the Mandoverse. Andor was part of the Mandoverse? Dale's got to go soon. It's not over. Haven't you read my stories yet? Yes, Dale. And I'm going to email you about those because I have. They won't video game Luke from the EU. It's not going to happen. That wasn't good, right? No, look, the EU, and I've said this from the start, there's a lot of EU stuff that I loved. But there's a lot of it that I didn't love. And when I read it, I always read it with the thought in my mind that they were just kind of like stories, like side stories. They weren't necessarily, official, right? Like nothing I read to me was ever, this is officially what happened. So when somebody would say something and I read, the Truce of Baccarat or whatever, I wouldn't be like, well, in that book, actually, I never really went down that rabbit hole because the movies are the movies. What happens in the movies is all that really matters. Boba's original background was great. Original background. Sometimes I love it. Where's Dale? They won't video game Luke. Sorry, my chat keeps freezing around here now. But Snoke Eagles Plagueis is lovable. I just think the main reason George kept saying it can be canon until it's not. Yeah, well, that's it. It's like, do it, and then when they make a movie, they're going to be like, that's not what we're doing. And they have every right to do that. As much as you love that story, once it's in a movie, that's really what matters. I know people get mad at Dave Filoni because they retcon Kanan's intro in Order 66. But, we see that in live action. It'll probably be different from the Bad Batch, too. And I think that's fine. I don't know. I think we hold on to these things a little too tightly. And we forget that there could be some creative, like, you could see Elvis, they just, the Elvis movie last year, I haven't seen it, but there's been 47,000 movies about Elvis Presley. And I guarantee you they're all different. They probably all start and end very similar, but they're all different, right? Like these stories, it's broken telephone. They're different things that happen for all of it. And that's fine. I'm okay with it. I mute my mic. I'm pretty good at doing that. In the EU, he was a lots of mic issues. Yeah, look, okay, I love Book of Boba Fett. And I know people wanted him to be super cool. I know, Vermont Mike, you like Book of Boba Fett as well. I know people wanted him to be the super cool, badass bounty hunter. But for me, I think we got a more compelling story, especially as a one-off, right? Because it doesn't take away from him ever being a badass. In fact, in that show, it kind of showed that he was a badass, but he's older, wiser, more mature, and he was also being digested in the belly of a sarlacc, right? So for me, that show was perfect. But look, there's Darth Maul books in the EU that I adore. I love Darth Maul, obviously, so the more I can get of Darth Maul, I eat it up. But, it's not like this is. I started reading the new comic, the canon comic when it came out. I wasn't all in that. I thought it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. But that's the thing. Like, you take the stories and just keep telling us. As long as the stories are good and compelling, we're going to keep coming back. And I don't think, but the stranglehold that we have on what's canon, what's not, we need to loosen it up a little bit. And again, though, you can't really. Like when James Gunn took over DC, James Gunn and Peter Safran, when they took over DC in early November, they mapped something out, right? And then we got news like Henry Cavill's not back, blah, blah, whatever. But it wasn't until as I stumble across the word, mid to I think it was late January. It might have been the end of like the last day of January around that. Maybe it was February. I don't remember. That's when we got an announcement of here's the first half of our first phase. And why I bring that up is there was already DC stuff going on all around. And then they decided, hey, you know what? DC, though, it's going to be movies, it's going to be TV, it's going to be video games, and it's going to be comics. And we're going to do what they're doing in Star Wars. But they actually, for the first time in probably since what, like 1989's Batman, they have, or maybe against the Dark Knight, they have the advantage. They have a foot up on the competition, a foot up on Star Wars. They can beat Star Wars at their own game because DC Studios right now has something that Star Wars doesn't have. And that's James Gunn and Peter Safran. It has someone at the top. Because James Gunn and Peter Safran work for David Zaslav, who is Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy needs to hire James Gunn and Peter Safran for Star Wars. Because then when you have that, you put them in a room, in the Aaron Rodgers dark room for like 4 days. You let them come out and be like, this is, or just he or she or whatever, whoever you get, they come on, they're like, this is our pitch. Because that's the only way you can get the books, the comics, the TV shows, and the movies to be coordinated. Is if you have a singular figurehead looking down on everything, planning it all out. They had a story group, but the story group wasn't really a story group. They were just, I think the story group is, and they're wonderful. They have the knowledge. I read that in the, I believe it was Star Trek: The Next Generation, when the writers would write a script, they would leave like parts blank for like the tech terms, and then somebody else would fill out the tech terms. And that's kind of what the story group was for Star Wars, from what I could tell, from what it sounded like to me. That's what it seemed like. DC Fontana was a writer for Star Trek and eventually wrote for Star Wars Legend novels. She said she liked writing for Star Wars after Return of the Jedi because she wasn't limited by canon. So exactly, like, you want the freedom. But again, nothing is going to work until you have someone singular up top saying, this is it. This is it. This is our storyline. And the thing is, like James Gunn said, they planned out, I believe, 10 years, the first 10 years. Plan out 10 years of Star Wars. It's not that hard. It might be hard now because you got Mando and Ahsoka. Like, you've got shows that are succeeding, right? And in the pipeline and Acolyte and all that. But it's not that hard to just say, what are we doing, right? And above all that, someone can even come in and they're like, just saying, you can't touch the Mandoverse or Acolyte or Andor. But Andor's going to be over for the next season anyway. But you can't touch this stuff. But anything beyond the Rise of Skywalker, play ball. Like, they could take that approach to somebody, right? And then when, anyway, I don't, obviously this is all about, but I'm just saying, for all the stuff that they promised us, was it 10 years ago, whatever it was when they made the announcement, No More Legends, everything's going to be connected. The only way for that to ever have been truly achieved was to have an actual Star Wars figurehead. And they never did that. They never followed through on that. And so I think that's why a lot of it has felt messy to a lot of fans, right? Because J.J. Abrams did this. Rian Johnson did this. Claudia Gray did this. Dave Filoni did this. And so it's kind of disjointed in a lot of ways. And the pieces weren't connecting. Credit now to what's going on now is pieces seem to be connecting, and the Acolyte seems to be connecting to the High Republic from what we hear. So that's very cool. It's nice. It's like the connective tissue is what they need. And that's why, what I just said, the point is kind of moot because they figured it out on the TV side. Like, the Mandoverse all connects. Andor, if Andor is going to connect to it, that's going to be great. Acolyte doesn't have to. It's 200 years in the past. It doesn't have to. Or 100 years, whatever it is. It doesn't have to. It has to know where it's going, right? But it doesn't have to connect in any way. It just has to have that feel of Star Wars. And the set pieces have shown that it kind of looks like Star Wars. It looks like it's part of the Mandoverse. It looks like it's part of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like it's a spin-off of Obi-Wan Kenobi in a lot of ways. And the cool thing is, like, Coruscant, I thought Coruscant looked the best on episode 3 of Mandalorian, which was the Pershing episode. But it felt like the same one that we got in Andor. So it's just little things like that. They figured it out on the TV side. I hope they figured it out further. This episode was fantastic. I can't wait to talk to Brock about it. We're a mile a minute here because I loved it. I can't believe we've been doing this for a half hour. I absolutely loved it. It's the little things that they do. R5 coming up big, as always. There's a show I'd like to watch. So you got, and what's great about this episode is the interweaving of the story. That it started off where it started off with Grief Karga, and that was a great scene. And then he sends the message, and then we go to the bar with Zeb, and that's a great moment. And then we go to Coruscant, and we see Kane, and that's a great moment. And then we go to the Mandos, and they're going to have to relocate now, and that's a great moment. And then we get the kick-ass battle, and that's great. And the pirates perish, and one of them takes off to go fight the skeleton crew. And that's a great moment. And then the Mandos sit, and that's a great moment. And then Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan is called in from the Armorer. And by the way, there was a couple moments in this that really had, to me, horror movie vibes to them. When the Armorer came in to beat down the pirates, that kind of felt a little bit like a horror movie to me. And at the very end, when we saw Gideon Gideon shuttle, and we're kind of seeing it through the droid, the R or whatever, the droid's scope. When we saw that kind of had like a nice horror movie element to it as well. And I totally dug it. I really liked it. But Bo-Katan goes in, the Armor starts talking to Bo-Katan. And the Armor's like, remove your helmet. And she's very confused and conflicted and doesn't want to. She's kind of bought into the way and she doesn't want to. And the Armor's like, no, just do it. You walk both ways. You can unite all the Mandalorians. And that was a cool moment. Again, let me know what you guys thought in the chat, though, because I was kind of like, all right, sure. But she's had this opportunity before with the Darksaber, where she didn't completely earn that right. But she had the chance before, and she obviously failed. And Heidi says, I noticed the Navarians were forced into the cave like the Mandalorians. Parallels. Good catch there, Heidi. So Bo-Katan's had this opportunity before. Whether Armorer knows that or not, I'm not sure. And I'm not sure. And then, of course, we find the findings that Mandalorians broke Gideon out. And what Mandalorians are out there? There's Axe Woves and the wrestler. I cannot remember her name, but Axe Woves is just such a stupid name. But I remember that name. But those two are out there. They're the only ones that I know are out there. Stop me if I'm wrong. So it'll be curious to see what plot that was if the Armor had any say in that as well, because when things start to look good for the Mandos, that's when it starts to get the most bleakest. Or they're being framed. I was going to bring that up too. Or there's obviously the possibility that they are being framed, which is a huge possibility. I don't know if I buy into that necessarily, the being framed aspect to it, because, I mean, yes, I do buy into it, because that was my first thought, is they're being framed. But for the storyline, I'm not sure how many episodes we have left, but for the storyline, is it more intriguing that that's legit and there's a bigger play out there, and the Mandalorians getting together and being a faction again is a lot more difficult than you would believe. And again, if the Armorer has anything to do with this. The armor and my boy Heavy. Oh, tomorrow I'll bring my Heavy Funko Pop. Heavy's been my favorite. Paz Vizsla. He's been my favorite since season 1. I got the Funko Pop. I wasn't able to get the Black Series because I just couldn't find it. Because he's my, and now like wasn't in season 2, showed up in Book of Boba Fett, and now is like the best Mandalorian. And I'll fight anybody that says anything otherwise. Dale Erdman, right? But Bo learned from those other experiences, or she'll bury herself this time for good. I think that's the bet the armorer is waging. You might be right. It depends on where the armorer is on all of it. But you're right about Bo-Katan learning from her past experiences. And then the other thing too is like I know she failed, she failed, but my wife who watches the episode like this, she has no idea that Bo-Katan has failed. She doesn't know what's going on, so it won't really affect anything in second chances and whatnot. And she might even say, she did kind of mention that she had it for a brief time. So we'll see where it goes. This season again, I'm going to end this the way I started. Is it still feels like this is that they've got the pedal to the metal. They know exactly what they're doing. They know where they're heading. Again, like the first 2 seasons were more episodic. This one is definitely a stronger on it being a binge watching show. I think it's going to be one where you watch it all at once and you're like, that was a freaking movie. I didn't watch season 2 all at once, but I did watch season 1 straight through, and I dug it. But this one I think is actually going to play even stronger than season 1 when it's all said and done. Season 1, Quill, my man. Quill and Heavy are the two, and I actually have, so I have 3 Funkos from the Mandalorian. Quill, Heavy, clearly. And I think, do I still have the box for that one? I don't know if I do. I think his name was actually just like Mandalorian, like Heavy Mandalorian. I think it was what his name on it. And I have Mando riding a blurb as well. It's a soap opera. Yes, it is Zach Lee, says Dale. Curious where we're going with all of this Bo-Katan, or not Bo-Katan, the armorer. What side of the fence is the armorer? Zach T. Lee. What side of the fence is the armorer on? Is the armorer believing in Bo-Katan, or is the armorer trying to drive things further through the Mandos? Because her reign as leader, like she hasn't really been the one making these decisions, right? Like Mando's kind of swooped in. Now you got Grief Karga, Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan has seen a mythosaur. So if anything there happens, armorer might not be too happy. And bad things could follow for those in the armorer's path. Because the armorer, as much as I love Heavy, and I think Bo-Katan is turning into one of my favorite characters, and her helmet is the best. And I love Mando. But the armorer is easily the most badass of all of them. Most wise, perhaps. But that could be her Achilles heel, and it could be coming to an end for her very, very soon. I'm not sure what the thing with these shows is. I've never really known where they're going, and I like that Kane on Coruscant showed up, and she was kind of manipulating the conversation, and our rebellion friend was like, well, "You're kind of full of crap. But Tim Meadows, by the way, I think Tim Meadows it was greater to see Tim Meadows than Zach. But it was like, and Tim Meadows was like, nope. This person who I barely know, I trust more than what you're saying, because the New Republic has rules, and we have to follow those rules. Otherwise, we will turn into the Empire. Thus, by not following the rules, they turn more and more into the Empire each and every day. I would give this episode out of 10, 26. No, in fact, I would give this a 9.78921 out of 10. I loved it. What would you guys score? Let me know. People are complaining that Bo is getting too much screen time, but it's called The Mandalorian, not the Din Djarin show. I was thinking he was on Police Academy, but it was another police show. To Heidi's point, yeah, Bo-Katan's been getting a lot of attention, and it is called The Mandalorian, not the Din Djarin show. But I think we were led to believe that Din Djarin was the Mandalorian. Now, I've said this every day. I say this where I kind of feel like the Mandalorian show that we know ended with season 2, and we've moved on to this now, which is about a bigger story. I mean, arguably, Rebels wasn't about the Mandalorians either, but it was about the Rebels. But the Mandalorians kind of took over in the last few seasons. This is just the nature of storytelling, as you know, Heidi. Like, things happen and characters evolve and they grow, and we need Bo-Katan is needed because of she walks both ways. Like, they're utilizing her perfectly. In my opinion, the way they're utilizing Bo-Katan is perfect. She walks both ways. They're acknowledging that. They're using that to the advantage of the plot. You can't do that with Din. And Din, I mean, has he been sidelined that much? Because you still get the sense like he's the one that's like, we have to go to Grief Karga. We have to fight the pirates. We're going to do the bait and switch, and I'm going in. And so he's still kind of a leader of it all. Grogu's screen time definitely went down. But I mean, Grogu's a puppet, and when Grogu bounces, people complain anyway. So you're in a lose-lose situation with all of this stuff. And it's Star Wars at the end of the day, and we're following a Mandalorian character. It's Star Wars, and we're following a Mandalorian character, and the people that surround that Mandalorian character. Are we going to complain when we watch Ahsoka and Sabine is in it, and Hera shows up? Is this where we are now, where we just nitpick over things? The Mandalorian are replacing the Jedi. Yes, that too. He's been in a ton of movies. Yes, he does look like he was a ladies' man. Yes, he was. I like that movie. I love the skit, but the movie was good too. See you on the replay, Joe. I'm going to wrap it up soon anyway. This has been a lot of fun. I don't know where anything's going on the show. I love the way they're playing it. Again, those like nitpicking over Bo-Katan's getting too much screen time or whatever. I can't agree with that because it hasn't felt like they've taken away from Din. Like, I can understand, like, I love Book of Boba Fett, but when Mandalorian showed up and a whole episode was about the Mandalorian, you're like, well, that took away from Boba Fett. But I haven't gotten that feeling yet. Even in the episode that went with Kane and Pershing, I didn't get that feeling. That like nothing is taking away from the story I'm watching. And this one really feels like there is a lot of thought put into this. A lot. Like Andor, I felt the same way with Andor. When I'm watching Andor, I'm like, they thought this through. Like, they know what they're doing. They've got a plan. Right? And maybe Leia was the Jedi, Return of the Jedi. Maybe she was. But I feel like this episode has a plan, and they're executing the plan. And we're nitpicking the plan because we don't really know what the final product is going to be. And I think that also has to do with the binge nature culture that we're in now, right? I use Stranger Things as my example, and I love Stranger Things. But Stranger Things drops, and I don't, but most people, they watch it in one sitting. So it's like one big, long 12-hour movie or whatever, right? So you sit down and you watch Stranger Things. And that's kind of, but so the thing is in Stranger Things, if they don't explain X in episode 2, right, you're not going to be pissed off because you're going to watch it all anyway, and they'll be explained in episode 7. So you haven't had to wait 5 weeks in between. Whereas Mandalorian, they haven't. Now, I still think, and I like the first 2 episodes, but I still think the first 2 episodes more so than the last 3. I really felt like incomplete. Like, okay, and I like short. You guys know the shorter the episode, the better. But I just, they kind of like just stop, and I was like, where what? Like the first episode's like, all right, they set everything up. I'll give it a pass. The second episode, it's like, oh, the myth is, no, we're done. Like, okay, I feel like you could have continued, but you didn't. That's fine. But the last 3, I don't know. To me, like even this one, which kind of ended on a pseudo cliffhanger, I'm looking behind me. Hey, Tumed. We're setting up a show. Tumed and I. So Get ready. Get ready. By the way, I did an Outliner Club with Bring the Pain podcast. Rob, it's a lot of fun. It's gonna be fun. That's gonna go up soon. 2 minutes gonna join me on one as well. Rolling out between this channel and Digital Charcuterie channel, we are going to be rolling out a lot of videos coming up, a lot of live shows, a lot of live talking. But nothing beats Star Wars as far as I'm concerned. Where this show goes, where Mandalorian goes, I don't know. I mean, I kind of like the one pirate, Thane, I think his name was, who looked like the Muppet, the Blue Dragon Muppet, whatever his name is. When he flies away, he's like, ha! He flew away. I'm like, oh, so that's how he gets the skeleton crew, as he flies away. All right, that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm glad they killed the rest of them and then went down. By the way, the Ugnut Pirate, oh my God, put him on a Disney ride. Ugnut Pirate of the Caribbean. That's what I want. Ugnut Pirate of the Caribbean. That's how you do it. Did they replace the Johnny Depp Jack Sparrow? Replace it with Ugnut Pirate. You should have Jaws back on the screen. Yeah, there's a Jaws poster behind me. I can't. No. The computer's really far from me. I can't reach it. Anyway, let's wrap this up. I really like this episode. I like where it's going. I like that there's a thought process to it. That's what I really appreciate about it. I appreciate about it with the Book of Boba Fett, and I think even the people that did not like Book of Boba Fett would concede the fact that that there was an overall plan to where it was going. It wasn't an empty storyline that went nowhere. It went somewhere and it ended. And you don't have to. I'm not saying because of that you like it. I'm just saying you have to concede that fact. And I feel the same is true for Mandalorian. Where it ends, I don't know. This one, unlike Book of Boba Fett, which was one season, maybe we get a second, maybe we don't. I don't know. This one, we know we're getting more. We're getting at least one more, but we know we're getting more Mandalorian episodes or seasons. So do they end it on a cliffhanger? Or do they end it with whatever this season's storyline is about, which I'm guessing is about Mandalorians reuniting? Do they end that this season, or do they progress it to the next season? Because they dealt with the pirates already and Grief Karga. So you've dealt with two of your main situations from the first episode. Now all you got left is the Mandalorian and the Darksaber, and of course, Moff Gideon. Never tell me the odds tomorrow. Will we see Moff Gideon next week? We'll find out 1 week today when everybody wakes up at 3 a.m. Eastern time to watch it, and I'm still sleeping. And then I wait until 6 o'clock in the evening to watch it, and I have to avoid social media like the plague. I guess nobody really avoided the plague. So I have to avoid social media like something you avoid for an entire day because nobody has any chill on that thing. And they are ruining the show for people that haven't seen it the minute it goes out. And so I don't go on there. I just don't. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Oh, next season is a flashback to make Solo 2 happen. All right, everybody. That's 2 minutes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. Star Wars, I don't know. I just haven't been disappointed yet. I mean, underwhelmed sometimes, yeah. But this season of Mandalorian, they've got it figured out. If you don't think they do, maybe you should go home and rethink your life. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe. And until next time, may the force of others be with you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.